Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 23 here in the EMC to the Sky playthrough. We have done some upgrading onto our power grid. I added another row, which is 6 more reactors in total, or another 480,000 FE per tick. So we're basically at 1.5 million from these alone, which means that we have enough to power quite a large dragon seed farm, or dragon essence farm, to make dragon eggs, I should say. And if we come over here and take a look at it, I have doubled up the size of the actual seed farm where we have the seeds planted, and I moved this dark matter pedestal up so the range of it goes down so that these get hit by it, and then from there up it goes all the way to here. So that is the maximum vertical height that it can do, and so we are maxing that out. I also dramatically increased these crafters. I doubled that up, so these are now getting a lot more through. I ended up putting 2 flux points on each one. Well, I have one in the middle that's sharing it to see if I could get more power in here, because these were running out, but I don't think that those are actually working, because I think that the limitation is that this machine can only pull in 500 at a time. So having 2 power sources on it didn't really change it. They did, however, catch up, and so I'm not running out of power anymore. The 4 of them seem to be able to handle the output okay. So I might change that up a little bit to make it work a little more efficiently. And I'm probably going to expand this out even farther, because while we're getting a really solid amount of EMC now, we're at 338 billion after I AFK'd for a couple of hours, and we have a decent amount coming in. We still have a long way to go, so expanding this is probably the way to do it. So this farm right now gives us, it fluctuates, but it averages around 15 million EMC per second. So I think that with this one pedestal, we could very easily quadruple the size of this and recreate it 3 more times, and then put the pedestal kind of in the middle, and still have no problems keeping all of them running at the fastest speed possible. And it's going to take a lot of power, though, and I have been considering the options with that. I can certainly continue expanding the power that I have, and that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. Let's get up here so we can look at what we have again. The issue is, it's not really an issue, it's just there is still big reactors in the pack. And so I'm considering building a big reactor. So let's take a look at that. In our quest book, I think all it shows for big reactors is that they exist. There's no quest line for it yet. Let's take a look at big reactors in our system here. So big reactors is a mod that has had a long history. It's actually bigger reactors. So let's do that. There we go. So this is all the items for it. This is a mod that at one point was big reactors, then it was extreme reactors, now it's bigger reactors. A lot of different remakes of it for different versions, but they're all basically the same. There is blocks that you craft to make a reactor, and you can see most of these, if not everything, is EMCable. Wrench isn't, uranium isn't, but we have uranium that is. Even the cyanite and stuff are, some of those are EMCable, which makes this really nice. The thing that makes this hard to get into is you need a lot of things like graphite to craft reactor casings. In this case, graphite's EMCable. The uranium that we're going to use, there is one that's EMCable, and the iron is. Also, the reactor casings themselves are. So building a massive reactor and fueling it with uranium is not going to be very time consuming, because we can just grab these things and make them. We only need to make the fuel rods one time. We only need to make the ports one time, and then we can have as many of them as we want, because they're all EMCable. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of time here, and we're going to craft all the things that we would need so that we can learn them. So reactor casings is one that we're definitely going to need to have. So we'll teach that to our system. We need to have reactor fuel rods. Those are the pieces inside the reactor that actually house the fuel and create the power. We need control rods so that we can control the power and see and control how much the fuel rods import. We need to have a terminal. The terminal is what basically the control panel for it. The redstone port allows us to control some of the things with redstone. The coolant manifold I think we only need for turbines, which we're not going to do right now. I definitely want reactor glass because that'll help with building. The coolant port, the control rod, the computer port. I don't know if we're going to use computers, but let's do that. We already have the casing. The access port we definitely need because we're going to be able to we want to be able to put things in and power tap so that we can get power out. The heat exchanger terminals, I'm not sure what these are, but I can make this one because we have the stuff to do it, and then we'll have it if we want to try it. I think that this is something that's new from when I've last used this, so it might be something I have to learn to do, but I think heat exchanger implies that that probably connects up to the turbine system, because basically you have a system where you have a reactor and it generates power through the use of steam. The passive reactor generates that steam and then turns it directly into power. And that's what we're going to build. But you can also take that steam and put it into a turbine to spin turbine blades and make even more power. I don't know if we're going to get into that, but I think if we do, that's what some of these machines are for. The heat exchanger allows us to transfer heat into our turbine to increase the temperature of the steam so that we can increase the speed of the turbine, which allows us to get crazy amounts of power. For now, we're just going to set up a reactor using this. So the basic process is we use reactor casings to build reactor fuel rods, or encase reactor fuel rods. The glass we can use as outside blocks too, so we can see inside. We need control rods to go on top of the fuel rods. We're going to need a power tap for power to come out. We're going to need redstone ports to control it. We need access ports to put the fuel in. We need the terminal so that we can control it. We only need one of those. We'll do 2 of these. Power tap, we're only going to need 1. We'll keep a stack of those. These we'll just need 2. Is there a book involved in this? I wonder. Doesn't look like there is. So it would be nice to be able to look and show you the things, but I don't think we have that. But I can show you what I know from the mod. So the other thing we need to do is have a big space for this. So well, let's see, does this show us what the largest possible size is? It doesn't. So we'll probably have to figure that out. In the past, I've built reactors up to and including ones that were like 64 by 64 by 64. I don't know if we can go that big in this pack because I don't know which version we're using. I think I might take a moment to check and see, and I think I'm going to build the reactor underneath our island, under the pyramid. We might design a room down here, but it's going to be a massive structure, and I don't want it to outshine the pyramid itself. So I'm not going to build it inside or on top or anything like that. We're just going to build it underneath, and that will work just fine. Did some reading on the wiki, and in this version of bigger reactors, we can go as big as, by default, I think it's 128 by 128 by 192. That's crazy. This was crazy enough. I went 64 by 64 by 64. So when it comes to this, I'm going to put a wrong block here just so I can demonstrate it. You can see this has not formed into a multi-block structure. When you click, it says invalid block reactor fuel rod here. So if I take that invalid block out, it then allows me to put the right block in. That's not the right one either. And you can see it turns into a multi-block structure. Pretty crazy how you can do a multi-block structure that is that big. We have a redstone port, power tap, terminal, access ports. This should be output, outputting waste. So now we have an input and an output. You can also see the inside here. This is offline. Waste ejection is enabled. If we were to give this fuel, it would start running. This reactor is really big, but it doesn't have a lot of fuel rods. And by that, I mean as many as it could. This has 244 around this ring. There's 64 rings. That's a lot. 244 times 64, 15,616 spaces for fuel to go inside the reactor. I thought about originally doing like a crisscross pattern the whole way across, but I did not want to spend the rest of my life building this big reactor. So for now, I did it like this. I just want to do some testing. The next thing I need to figure out to get this to work is whether we have any kind of redstone wire that would work vertically, because that'll make this a lot easier. I want to be able to just connect our redstone without having to do anything too crazy. Doesn't look like we're going to get lucky with that. In the past, I've used like red alloy wire because it can stick on the walls. I don't see that. I don't see anything like that. So what we're going to have to do is just let's look at these ports first. So we want to do change control rod insertion input. So I want to do so let's make this an output first. So output, redstone signal, trigger while below. I don't want to do, actually no, let's not do that one. Let's do casing temperature, fuel enrichment, fuel amount, waste amount, output stored. Doesn't look like it has. What I wanted to see was one that had the amount of power as a variable percentage. I don't think this version has that. So we can do, basically what this is this is saying it's going to send out a redstone signal. On this one, it'll be fuel temperature output. When the fuel temperature is above or below the set temperature, send a signal. This one is casing temperature output. While it's above or below the fuel temperature, and so forth. So fuel enrichment. Wonder if there is, look in here again. If we go back to bigger reactors, what other ports do we have here? There is a computer port, redstone port. Wonder what the computer port does. Let's try this. Just because I want to try to find a way to do it the way I've done this in the past, because it was really elegant and I liked it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. So let's put these on. And these only interact with the computer, it looks like, which I don't want to get into. In the other versions I've used, there have been their RedNet port, which have some different redstone controls than what I'm seeing here. And that might have been just in the version I had, or it may have been a different name for the redstone port. But let's go back to our redstone ports. And then what we can do is we might need to have a more redstone port. Let's grab a couple more. So this one we'll put as an output when the fuel is above 90%. Check. Or not when fuel, when the output stored. So when our batteries inside this reactor reach 90%, we're going to send a signal out from here. And then on this one, we're going to do control rod insertion set to 0. No, 100. And then we're going to need, actually, I'm going to move these because I don't want them to be, I was thinking I could just do it with wires. If I had a RedNet wire, I could just connect them directly. But since I'm going to have to do it in a way where I can set up some actual redstone, let's move them over here a little bit. We're going to put here, here, and then we'll do that again. So we're going to do battery trigger while above 90%. So when the battery power stored is 90%, we want to insert the control rods 100%. We want to do this triggered one signal. And so then we'll come in here, we'll grab repeaters and redstone dust. So let's do a repeater coming out of here and going back into here. Then we'll just connect them with some redstone dust. So that means when the power reaches 90%, it will send a signal in here that inserts the control rods to 100%. And then we want to do another one. And this one we're going to do when the power level is below 10%, send a signal. And that's going to trigger us to set the control rods one signal to 0. Apply. So we're going to do another repeater here and there. Okay, so this is sending a signal. While below 10, control rods should be at 0. And that's good. Control rods in at 0 means the reactor is running at full speed. So let's take a whole bunch of fuel. I don't know how much fuel this is actually going to take. Oh, I think I'm actually going to need to input it with something. I don't think I can just directly input it on this one. So let's do, I'm just going to use a hopper because it'll be easier. We'll do an EMC link. I don't know that we need anything too crazy. I want it to go fast, but I don't think it needs to be super duper fast. Let's do it like that. We're going to move this one over and actually put it here. That way we can do its own thing over there. We'll put another one of these here. So I'm going to put an EMC link on top of here. And then we're going to go back in and grab uranium. And let's set this to uranium. So now I should have fuel dumping into our system. Theoretically. Oh, yep, there it's going in. It's going to take it a minute to get it all the way full, but it's in there. Turn the reactor on. So the thing to keep in mind is this is a reactor. It's the largest size reactor, but it doesn't have the fuel rods in an efficient manner. It doesn't even have a lot of fuel rods. It has a relatively small amount of fuel rods for its size. But even with that, temperature's rising very fast. We're already at 300,000 RF per tick, and we only have like 1% of our fuel in. The more fuel we have and the higher the temperature, the higher this is going to go. So as you can see, this is going to be in a ridiculously fast power. Each of the reactors we made with Powa was making 80,000 FE per tick, which is the same as RF per tick. This is already making 720,000, which is half of all of the ones we did for the Dragon Seeds, and it's still climbing. It is using 22 millibuckets per tick of fuel, and this, I think, is the reactivity rate. This is how much the reactor is going. As this climbs, we get more from fuel, so the fuel efficiency goes down. The temperature helps to change that as well. And so this is going to keep climbing until we're filled with the fuel. We've now reached 1 million RF per tick, and we're still climbing. So I'm going to let this go until it gets up to the point where this hits 90%, and then I'll show you what that means as far as power goes. This actually went up a lot faster than I expected, so I couldn't actually show you the switch. But when this got to 90%, this redstone went on, causing the fuel rods to insert. If we look at the fuel rods, they're 100% of the way in. We could get more complicated with this and make it so that we have one of these for every 10%. I may actually do that. Just put them down in a row and make it so that at 10%, the fuel rods are inserted at 10%, and when it's at 0%, the fuel rods are at 0, and things like that. What I've done in the past with the RedNet was there was one where there was a variable signal that comes out of here, and then we could match it up to the fuel rod insertion manually, so that like at 99% we were at 99% fuel rod insertion, and so that meant that the reactor scaled dynamically, meaning that as the power got to the top, we produced less power, and as it got to the bottom, we produced more power. You can see this is dropping, and because this is dropping, we are producing, we produced more power. So I think it got to the point where it needed more power, so it turned on maybe for a second. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. Oh, actually, no, I think it was just still running residually, and we have more fuel in, so this is going up. But either way, the fuel rods are in, which means the reactor is not producing power. Fuel is still being dumped in. Power is all the way up. When this gets down to 10%, it's changed the fuel rods to 0. Otherwise, they will stay at 100. That means that our fuel rods will block us making power, or control rods, I should say, until we need it. Right now, I only have one of our Dragon Egg farms connected to this, just so I could see some power being moved. This thing produces a ridiculous amount of power. I could probably increase the size of that Dragon Egg farm and connect it to this at a level that's like, I don't know, 50 times the size of what I have, and I could probably still provide the power. And keep in mind, this is just one row of fuel rods in here. It's all being powered by EMC because the uranium that's going in here is all going in. I don't know why we keep getting cyanide back in here. Is all going in. I think I'm going to change this. Is all going in because of the EMC link here. Let's do it this way. I'm going to turn this to that. That should still allow it to go in. And then I can also do an upgrade. I kind of want to do, just to make it super fast. Where are our upgrades? Let's see. Can I craft this? Sure can. That's our ultimate. So that means we can now transfer out 64 items every tick, which means that this should be going up a little bit faster than it was. Can we get to the point where we make this infinity pipe upgrade? Oh, we can eventually. Oh my goodness, that would mean instantaneous transfer, but look how many shards it takes. We'll put that away for right now. Goodbye. So this is now transferring the fuel a lot faster. This is pulling out our cyanide, the waste. It should be coming out of here. This is direction output, outputting waste. So when the reactor's running, it outputs cyanide here. Eventually, I will put a network receiver here so that we can just have it import directly into our storage system, and we don't have to worry about this chest overloading. Oh, you can see it's actually outputting now because I guess the reactor started running again. I'm not quite sure why it keeps kicking on at 90%. It's not supposed to do that. Oh, you know what? This is, I think all we would need is this one. Except I don't want it to, I think that we want this to be while above, but instead of it being, how do we do this? Instead of this being on signal, we do want this on pulse. Mode is C set. So let's break this for a second. Control rods are currently at 0. When a pulse from this goes through, it sets it to 100. Okay, that's what we want. We want this on pulse. I was thinking on signal meant that it would only change when a signal goes in. That means when it loses the signal, it stops you doing this command. So we're going to have the control rods go to 100% at 90%, and then this fuel will continue to drop. And the reason it gets up to 100% is because this is running so fast that it can go all the way up. And that's why I do 90%. I don't want it to keep running and making fuel too long. At 90%, it gives it time to ramp down a little bit before it shuts off. So right now we're producing power and there's nowhere for it to go, except for the couple 100,000 that's going out here. As we draw more power and this drops down, it won't kick back on again until we get to 10%. 10% is when this comes on. It'll turn this on, it'll send a pulse here, it'll set these to 0, and it'll stay that way all the way again until we get to 90%. So that's the simple way we have there. And again, like I said, we're going to connect up an import here to get cyanide in. That means that we will have no power problems going forward, I don't think. Maybe in the end game when we have to do some redonkulous stuff, but not right now. I think we're going to be good for a while. You can also see I have AFK'd a total of 8 hours, or played some of that, but mostly AFK, to get our EMC up to where it is. We're at 476 billion. Let's take a check at our EMC. Matter is what we were working on. I got to white matter. So actually I need to do fuel. I have, let me look at the fuel I have done. I need to get to fading matter. So to make fading matter, I need 3 white matter plus 6 of the white fuel. And right now we just don't have that because we're only at 2 of the white matter, and then we also need the white fuel on top of that. So that's not able to be done right now. The EMC links, however, let's check those out. So EMC link, we made it up to orange, and yeah, let's do EMC. We made it to orange. Can we craft a white one? And excellent. So now we can make the white EMC link. Next, we'll be making a fading one after we get the fading matter. And after the fading EMC link is the final EMC link, which uses some final star shards. This has infinite EMC transfer rates, which means we can pull in and pull out at an infinite rate every time we use this. I'm excited that we're eventually going to reach the point where we need to do that. But so for right now, with that project, we still just need to get, I need to pull out the yellow, an orange, and a white, put them in my inventory. But so I still just need to get to the point where we make fading matter, and then the fading EMC link, and the final EMC link, and Project E will be done. So this was a fun project so far. Like I said, we can expand this much bigger because we can add more control rods and fuel rods inside to have more fuel and meaning more power. We can also put in some modulator blocks. This is just a bare reactor. I left some things here so you can see inside. You can actually see the fuel rods slowly filling up with uranium. There's just air between here and those control rods, and then a big space of air in the middle. We can actually put things in there like either water or some solid blocks. I think the best one that we can use is Ludocrate blocks, because they're a pretty good transfer rate. I think that would really increase our power. To make those, though, we need to take Ludocrate dust, which is made from, actually no, Ludocrate is made, maybe we can't make Ludocrate. Doesn't look like we can. Oh, here we can. We can make Ludocrate blocks. So we need to make plutonium, and then all these other things we already have EMC. Plutonium is made in a system where we make plutonium dust. That doesn't seem to do it. Plutonium, I think, is reprocessed cyanide, but maybe the pack doesn't have that. Maybe, is there a recipe for plutonium blocks? No, it looks like maybe we can't get to this, but there are lots of blocks and fluids we can use inside to also increase the power here if we ever get to the point where we need to. But with the power levels we've been seeing, like right now this reactor is off. And because of the fuel and the heat that's in it, it's producing 140,000 RF per tick. which is almost enough to support the power going out without draining the battery at all. So when it's full, it's going to be crazy, crazy levels of power, which is great. We need them, and we're going to use those to get through the rest of this quest book and do all of our creative challenges before we're done. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. Hope it was a little informative, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.